Hello! Today we're going to talk about the information diet. So what is the information diet? The information diet, if we think about how we eat food, right, as people, we take in little meals, right, and some of us kind of eat more of what we define as junk food or ultra processed food, and some of us would maybe eat food that has a lot of fiber and is fresh, whole food, organic, whatever, right? When we eat food, we have this kind of saying that, you are what you eat. And I think that's very true with information as well. So I've kind of coined this term, the information diet, to describe how when we eat certain types of foods, they can contribute to certain states, okay? So when we think about somebody who really likes politics, for example, is really into politics, really cares about their political ideas, and they really prescribe to a certain set of thinkers, or they watch the news a lot, or they're watching a lot of specific people online, like that could really contribute to a certain framing of how they process and look at the world, right? That information diet kind of builds scaffolding around the window that they look at the world through. So why should we care about this? Like, how does this affect you, right? I would say that as with a diet of food, a varied information diet is kind of important. And I want to talk about that a little more. Like, how does it affect you? If you, just like with food, just eat one food, you will be malnourished in other directions of your nutritional profile, right? I don't know if you guys think about this, but like if we just eat like one type of food all the time, that'll give us like a certain set of vitamins and nutrients and other complicated bacteria that might be good for the microgut biome, etc. But really what our body wants is variety. Okay? So I think what contributes to like a healthy information diet, and if you don't have this can affect you in several ways, which I'm going to elaborate on in a minute, is being locked into a very specific way of processing the world, right? And that might work for you. There could be like benefits that come with that. You could be increasing your conviction towards your political ideas, or pushing forward in a certain direction to help you, go to the nth degree of whatever those ideas are that you're digesting. But something I really see a lot with clients is that when they have this really similar information diet, that it leads to them getting stuck because they're kind of running the same track over and over again, running in a circle. Not a lot's really changing for them because they're literally not taking in any other information, right? It's just the same kinds of ideas floating around. I think honestly, like, social media really compounds this, right? We see this, all of us. I see this on my social media feed. Everyone I talk to sees this too. Please disagree with me if you don't. But we get into our echo chambers, right? And some of us try to like push out of them. But they also come with like a certain bias, right? And I bring up information diet in this way because I really think that it's making it harder for us to connect with each other, right? When we think about having like an information diet that's really focused on one nutrition, right? One political idea being right, one political idea being wrong, it can really feel hard to see other points of view, right? And I think historically, I would like to think that there was maybe more of a varied information diet of not just being hard recommended the things you've already clicked on, which a lot of internet algorithms like to give to us, but also in our lives, right? I think variety is important to keep our mind revitalized and engaged, right? And I think that is a big part of a healthy information diet. When we do the same thing for years and years, if you're anything like me, when I saw my parents have a job for life, and they were working the same job the whole time, I guess my mind was kind of like, man, Like, that's a rough information diet. Like, for me, that would be really boring, right? I would feel like suffocated in that and trapped. But for some people, like, that's like enough to nourish them and keep them going, and they like a steady, consistent meal, and a lot of people get a lot of value out of that, right? What I'm trying to say here is that this framing is really important to understand when we get into mental blocks, okay? So something else I want to add on to here, thoughts, like, where do they come from, right? An interesting question. I think that thoughts come from a combination of the environment, of the information diet, and the self, right? How we emotionally respond to that, and like our values over here, and our, you know, our internal and our external, right? These kind of collide. And when the external kind of feeds in more and more to the internal, that voice becomes quieter and quieter, and the external becomes louder and louder, right? So when you, just like with food, if you eat too much information, you're gonna become fat. You're gonna become bloated. You can't process all of it, okay? We are built, humans, you know, I'm not a biologist, but my understanding is that, like, back in the day, we were like cavemen hanging out. All we need to do was like get our next meal, do a bit of hunting, maybe gather some berries, build some shelter, maybe have some collaborative relationships in the tribe, okay? Like, that was kind of a variety of information there, but it was also kind of like a specific variety, right? These days, we have so, like, extremes of information, all kinds of directions thrown at us all the time. Of do this, be that, this is great, do that, wow, look at that, wow, look at that, that's interesting, oh, that's sad, oh, that's funny. So much information thrown at us so quickly, like that it really quiets the internal voice, and also really, like, influences the kind of thoughts we have. So if you guys have ever had intrusive thoughts like I have, something that I've come to understand from intrusive thoughts is that they're often fed from kind of that information diet, but also kind of my emotional state, right? Those two kind of bounce off each other. And if you have, like, I've noticed a lot of information that says, hey, here's like an aggressive state, here's how you be aggressive, for example, then you're going to have more thoughts in that direction, but you won't necessarily act on them. Like, your emotions will kind of contribute to the action of those kind of thoughts, right? So when we think about trying to initiate change, trying to move towards new goals, trying to improve ourselves, when we notice things aren't right, start with the thoughts. The thoughts will tell you really where you're at, okay? So when you look at those intrusive thoughts, when you look at those, you can trail those back probably to your information diet in some ways. So for me, you know, I do watch YouTube, and I get kind of pulled into the political sphere sometimes, hence the example earlier. And I feel that it's had me thinking more about things in a political lens, right? But then that neglects kind of the other realities that we live in. And I think it's really important to try and see things from a few different angles, because when I get caught into one kind of blinkered point of view of the world, then I struggle to enjoy wider varieties of information. I struggle to consider the emotional aspects that people are experiencing. And then I get stuck and frustrated in a loop. So if you're anything like me, I'd really consider you to just write down on a notepad, something I do every single day. Write down on a notepad your thoughts, okay? Complete nonsense. It doesn't have to be coherent. The point of this is to farm out and tease out the information diet. What's happening in here that's leading to certain actions? Like, awareness is so key in understanding your own information diet that you will not make. It's really hard to make any progress without really kind of knowing what you're eating, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to lose weight, but if you eat certain types of foods, they'll encourage certain types of states. If you eat a lot of high sugar food, you'll have big energy spikes, right? Energy spikes and energy crashes. If you eat a lot of carbohydrates, like heavy carbohydrates, like a lot of gluten maybe, if you have an intolerance, or if you just don't, but if you eat a ton of gluten, you can feel really bloated and lethargic, right? And sleepy. Food influences our states, so does your information. And your states are key when you want to initiate change and action. Okay? So, little reflection from the end for me, you are what you eat, ultimately, as I said before. And recently, I've been really improving my productivity, really improving my ability to consistently work, ingesting kind of an awareness around my information diet. And I really feel like it's important to enjoy the boring broccoli, right? That's what I'm trying to do right now. And it's like hard to do that, right? Especially if you have like a lot of other emotional challenges. And I think something else I want to make really clear here when I think about the information diet is like, how do you feel about yourself in relation to the information diet? If needs aren't met, if you're struggling, if you like just feel lost, sometimes, you know, a comfort away from all the struggle feels like what you need. And I really empathize with that. But that will keep you stuck in the same information loop. And something that kind of needs to be grieved here is like going back to that comfort and feeling your emotions that come up when you're bored and being aware of your habits and thoughts around that. Okay? Because the reality is if you don't, like, you'll be in the same place. And like that might be fine if you're happy with where you're at, right? But if you're not, that's going to lead to a lot of distress. That might lead to feeling lost. It might lead to feeling hopeless, right? I see this in my friends. I see this in my family. I see this in the people I work with. So I really encourage you to have a little reflection on that. In summary, the information diet is like the food diet. You are what you eat. So if you eat certain types of content, information, you have certain kinds of experiences that will reinforce certain beliefs and certain thought patterns. This will affect you because with those thought patterns and framings of the world, you won't have a lot of change in how you approach things. That can be useful sometimes, but if you feel stuck, that's what you need to look at. Thoughts can spawn out of what your information diet is. States contribute to thoughts. I've been Will. You've been wonderful. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.